So good afternoon, everybody. It is so wonderful to be back here every Friday afternoon at 12 o'clock, whether I'm here or I'm in Israel or any place in the world. It is so magnificent to be back here and to study some beautiful Talmud together. But before we do that, we want to open the floor to our friends online and share a little Dvar Torah so that they can have a little thought on this week's Parsha. This week's Parsha begins a new book of the Torah, the third book of the Torah, Leviticus, otherwise in Hebrew known as Vayikra, and Hashem called upon Moses. And the question is, Moses was just there in the meeting tent, speaking to God, finishing the book of Exodus, and all of the construction of the tabernacle. Moses is right there. Why does God need to call him again? Our sages tell us that Moses left the meeting tent after he had finished his previous job. The question is, why did he need to leave? I mean, he's a homeboy. I mean, Moses is this is where he lived, so to speak. He was there all the time, conversing with the Almighty, so to speak. Excuse me, and always in this communication with Hashem, writing the Torah, teaching the mitzvahs to the Jewish people. Why did he need to be recalled now back into the temple, back into the meeting tent? So our sages tell us that Moses, notwithstanding his loyalty to Hashem, notwithstanding his loyalty to his task of being the leader of the Jewish people, he knew his place. Moses knew his place. And just because you're asked to build a house doesn't mean you own the house. Just because you're so passionate about something doesn't mean you have the right to do whatever you want to do. We see this mistake that the two children of Aaron made. The two children of Aaron who were very passionate about their mitzvahs. They were very passionate about bringing offerings. And they did something that they weren't asked to do in the house of Hashem. That's something you don't do. And what happened? We know they got the ultimate punishment of an early death, where God took their soul, and they died. Moshe knew that his place, his task, was over at this time. He leaves the tent of meeting, and God calls him back now. Vayikra. God calls him back. He says, no. Now I'm going to tell you about offerings. Now I'm going to tell you about the korbanot. So I think it's a very important lesson for us, wherever we are, in a relationship, in a synagogue, in an organization, wherever we are, a person needs to know their place. It's very important for us to always know our place. If a person is a guest in someone's house and feels like they own the house, it's a little problem. Right? We're all guests in this world. We're all visitors in this world. We're not permanent residents. The famous story of the Chafetz Chaim. A very, very wealthy businessman was traveling across Europe, and he stops in Radin, the great city where the Chafetz Chaim lived in. He has to go sail over the Chafetz Chaim. So he comes to the Chafetz Chaim's home, and he says to the Chafetz Chaim, Chafetz Chaim had like a little broken bench. He had a shaking table. He didn't have furniture, and the Chafetz Chaim was a great man. So this wealthy businessman, asks him, "Where's your furniture?" So the Chafetz Chaim turns back to him and says, "Where's your furniture?" He says, "Me? My furniture? I'm traveling." He says, "So am I." In this world, we're all travelers. We're all visitors. We're not permanent dwellers. We're not here forever. We have to recognize that this world that we're living in is on loan to us. We're here for a task. We're not here to get comfortable. We're not here to get so entrenched in our lives that we don't even realize we're here on a task. Moshe understood, I'm here on a task. I'm here for a job. When I'm done my job, it's all over. I got to get out. Not to get into a complacency, not to get into a state of mind where we think we're here to stay. And I think it's a very important lesson to know our place. Every person, the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot tells us, you have to, hamakiret mikomo, you have to know your place. You have to know where you're welcome, where you're not welcome. What your job is not. It's very, very critical for us to focus in our lives on what our job is and not what our job is not. For that, there are people who they have to fulfill their jobs, we have to fulfill our jobs. And I think it's an important reminder from this week's Parsha to always stay on course. Remember what your job is and always stay away from what your job is not. So with that, my friends, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward for you joining us here in our Talmud Lunch and Learn every Friday at 12 o'clock. And delicious lunch is always catered by Ed. Thank you so much. The wisdom is free, but lunch is not. So thank you so much, my friends.